First of all, I wanted to thank you all for talking about the trans issues yesterday. It's really important to hear that from as many media outlets as we can hear it from. So it's helpful. So thanks for that. I also wanted to point out something from last week's show, just kind of the election outcomes from the election and some analysis from that. So Emma said something about Michigan being gerrymandered. And I think it's important to remember about Michigan that actually they're just electing under the first map that was not gerrymandered due to a really heavy ground game to eliminate gerrymandering across the state.
Yes, so there was an independent commission, right, in Michigan?
Yes, yeah, and that was a grassroots effort. Actually, my mom worked on that one, and they had canvassers out. It was a bipartisan issue. So I think the story, though, from Michigan is not look at the strength of the Democrats in Michigan. I think the story is look at what happens in Michigan when you make the voting system more fair. It tends to favor people on the left. So I just think that I don't want to lose that message in the analysis that it was because of such a strong showing from the folks on the ground in Michigan that those maps got changed.
Yeah, let me just add something to that. There's a couple of things that we saw a very gerrymandered Florida and Texas, where the courts allowed that to stand. We saw the opposite in California and New York. In terms of like a partisan gerrymander, let's put it that way. I think in the main you're right. In the main you're right in terms of Michigan, but the gerrymander is going to have no impact on the governor's race there, for instance. And so there's two things happening in Michigan simultaneously. They may be, in some respects, connected insofar as that, like, when you organize to do one thing a year ago, essentially, right? That organization doesn't have to just evaporate. You've trained people to go out and canvass. You have developed networks. I get that it's bipartisan, but I think that there was more of an interest from Democrats to try and get this independent commission. Should also say that it is not a settled issue as to whether these independent commissions are actually even legal in the eyes of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court over the next couple of years could very well find that the legislature does not have the ability to delegate that authority to redistrict to an independent commission. They're headed in that direction. So an independent commission, which is I think the best solution for these things, and certainly, like you say, it creates more democracy, and more democracy tends to help, the center to the left. The Supreme Court may end up knocking that down. They have hinted at it over the past couple of gerrymandering decisions, but we'll see.
Yeah, and there was one other issue I think is interesting to think about too. And with gerrymandering, it's not just one thing that benefits, one side particularly or the other, although I did kind of just say that. In states like Maryland, where I live right now, the way that the state is gerrymandered, although it's gerrymandered for the Democrats, also has this kind of side effect of keeping more progressive candidates out. And that is kind of a problem, I think, going forward that analysts should look at as well.
Yeah, and I would say the other real problem in terms of keeping progressive candidates out is the DCCC, and hopefully, Sean Maloney's loss will help work on that to the extent that we can. I mean, it is a problem, but appreciate the call.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Andrew K. Sam, there's an extremely consequential state Supreme Court election in Wisconsin this April. It could potentially tip the balance of the court and get the Republican-drawn maps tossed. Let's put that on the calendar, and we'll get Wickler on. In fact, it's in April, but remind me of that, and we'll see, because that is really important. The state Supreme Court in Wisconsin is one of the most consequential ones in the country, it seems to me, and has been. Calling from 248 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Sam. This is Zach from Michigan.
Zach from Michigan, your ears must have been burning, Zach.
Yes, I heard the other caller from Maryland with the 248 area code. I was like, oh, okay, another one. But I wanted to add to the conversation about Michigan. We also recently passed, as you know, the Michigan's Proposal 3, which supports reproductive rights. And I wanted to talk about the Detroit Catholic Archdiocese response, which I thought was pretty interesting as a former Catholic and actually a former pro-life activist, regrettably.
Really? Before you get into this, what was it that, tell us how you came to not be that?
Well, I was raised in the Catholic Church, went to Catholic school, and, we were taught that abortion was murder. And, like, oh gosh, if it's murder, then we got to do something about it. So I went to the Washington, D.C. pro-life march when I was in high school. But yeah, and then I got out of it basically by reading and listening to people and realizing that it's just...
When did that happen? During college or after college?
Yeah.
I'm really interested in how that
college
happens to folks.
Yeah. I mean, so in college, I met people who were transgender, who were gay, and that really made me question the Catholic Church's, doctrine. And, that kind of led me to leaving the church and kind of going from I was more a traditional right-wing Catholic, Republican Catholic growing up, and kind of converted, for lack of a better term, after, meeting people.
Did you say where you grew up?
Michigan, right?
Michigan.
Yeah, I grew up in Michigan, the Detroit area. I'm in Kalamazoo now.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, what you said about going to like the pro-life stuff, that it reminds me of kids. Like that was how I'm from North Dakota. Like people would go to DC and it's because they were going with a church group to go protest abortion and stuff like that. It was like a major, like a field trip and social center.
Oh yeah. We hopped on a bus and we stayed at local volunteers' houses, and it was like an overnight trip to DC for the DC march. But I wanted to... Oh,
let me ask one more question. I apologize. Because I this is fascinating to me, and I know, people who have followed a similar trajectory, and I'm really curious about it. How does it work with your family now?
It's pretty tough. I can have a conversation about economic issues with my family, I think, and there's a lot of social justice Catholics.
Right.
And even though my family's pretty right wing with economics as well, but you can at least have a conversation about that. But with abortion, it's so personal, and it really I don't know how you say, well, the Catholic Church is just wrong about
right.
this, because the Catholic Church has a doctrine on it, but they don't necessarily have a clear doctrine on the economic side of things. So it's
right.
tough. It's real tough.
I bet. All right. Well, so you wanted to go into Michigan a little bit.
Yeah. So Michigan, in addition to the gerrymandering, another big thing I think that got the vote out was Proposal 3, which thankfully added to our state constitution abortion and contraception rights. And the Catholic Archbishop of Detroit, his name's Archbishop Alan Vigeland, he issued a letter quickly responding, basically inviting all the faithful to join me, this is Alan, in the first 2 weeks of Advent from November 27th to December 4th, and doing penance, giving alms, praying, and fasting. And he goes further saying, we must use our spiritual practices to make reparations for the great sin of abortion in our midst. So as a former Catholic and former pro-life activist, I just felt that this was clearly the Catholic Church's way of scolding any Catholics who voted for Proposal 3, because there clearly were, and reflects a clergy that is, I think, out of touch with many Catholic lay people. And further, it seems many American Catholic bishops will likely continue to be key partners with Republicans in the broader religious right. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like you say, I mean, let's put it this way. They're not going to change their perspective on this before your family does. And what is interesting to me is that, and maybe this is just more doctrinal than anything else, is that, maybe this is also their way of like exiting the political arena. I mean, now that it's like, I mean, this is the thing. It's once it's in the state constitution, it's in the state constitution, right? That is over. But I guess this is this is a function of Catholicism. It's a little bit of a high bar, but if you go in and you do your penance for a couple of weeks, all right, then everybody gets the right to an abortion. We're not for it, but you've paid your dues, as it were. I don't know.
Yeah, I think this is really digging in on their part and saying, no, if you're not a real Catholic if you voted yes on this. And I think this is part of a broader conversation. There's actually an article in the Wall Street Journal about the Catholic bishops conference where they were going to talk about, hey, should we be like Pope Francis and emphasize other issues like climate change and global injustice, or should we continue to emphasize abortion like we have been in the United States? I think this article from the Wall Street Journal is from this past weekend, on the 13th, by Francis X. Roca. But anyway, so since Humanae Vitae, the encyclical from Pope Paul VI in 1968, this has been, the confirmed teaching of the church, and I mean it has been before that, and it's kind of tough to get backtrack on it.
Yep,
it seems.
Do you ever talk to your family about evangelicals? What do they think about evangelicals? Because I've had some luck, particularly post-Trump, talking about, because I know people who voted their last abortion-only vote for Trump and then feel like I shouldn't have done that and a little bit embarrassed by that. But with those folks, I find it easy to say point out the sort of excesses of evangelicals and then want them to differentiate themselves from them.
I think it's I think there are some absurd elements of there are absurd absurd elements in the Catholic Church's doctrine, to be sure. But some of the the world being 6,000 years old and not believing in evolution kind of thing, that's kind of easy to find common ground with fellow Catholics. But unless you're part of the Catholic social justice movement, you're not really going to be. It seems like for the most part, people aren't really too amenable to hearing these arguments.
Interesting.
In favor of abortion rights. At least that's my personal experience.
Right.
I'm sure maybe others have been different.
Let me ask you just one more question. We got some breaking news in a minute. But what was your sense of if from the perspective of Whitmer, how did she win? She ran hard on abortion, it seems like, from the outside. Was that the sense in Michigan?
I think abortion helped a ton.
Did she frame it as how much was it about abortion and how much was it about freedom from government interference between you and a doctor? In terms of the way that it was framed?
Freedom from government interference is tough messaging for Whitmer after how hard she was hit after the code response, which
right,
I think she had a good code response, but that's kind of tough for her to navigate. I think people just came out. My perception is people just came out massively in support of abortion rights. After what the Supreme Court did, and Whitmer seems generally to be a pretty popular governor. To a certain degree, and I think potentially a future president.
Without a doubt. I mean, I think without a doubt. I mean, I think she's going to be on a ticket. I don't know if it's in 2024, if it's in 2028, but I would be surprised if she's not, because she ticks all the boxes on some level for what the Democrats want. Appreciate the call.
Hey, thanks. Left is best.
Thank you. Hey, this video is sponsored by Established Titles. What is Established Titles? It is a fun novelty gift that also helps you preserve some natural woodlands. It's a project based on historic Scottish custom where landowners are referred to as lairds or lords and ladies in English. Title packs give you at least 1 square foot of dedicated land with a unique plot number. So what happens is they plant a tree with every order. They work with global charities, One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future, to support global reforestation efforts. And you get one of these certificates. I'm a lord. I'm also a lady, too. I can be both. There's no reason I can't be. The first 200 people purchasing a title pack using my link will effectively be next to our plot. If you want to become a lord and lady, we can create our own Majority Report kingdom. So check it out. You can also, on official documents where they use a prefix, you can call yourself lord or lady. It makes an amazing last-minute gift. Established Titles is actually running a massive Black Friday sale right now. Plus, if you use the code MAJORITY, you get an additional 10% off. Go to establishedtitles.com/majority to get your gifts now and help support the channel.